All right. Hello again, everyone. In this video, I wanted to show you just more variations of skin tone. Again, remember in the watercolor resources, if you go to classwork, you have the skin tone lip color slides. You can open that up. And again, it has the different references for you. So again, those are all the colors on your palette. So with the corresponding numbers. In the next slide, I showed you just a bunch of different combinations for different skin tones, different skin colors. Of course, use these as a base, and then you can add different colors to it to adjust it and play around with it as you practice. Again, the way you use this is just pick a color that you like on here and then match up the two colors on the palette. So again, that color there is with orange and blue. So I see 8 is the blue, 16 is the orange. So that's how you use these again. I explained them in the previous video as well, a little bit more. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into this one. First thing I did was look at kind of like the lightest color. So this is my reference. I looked for the lightest colors like in here for the skin tone. Sorry, the phone looks a little more blue on the screen. But that was the skin color I started my base with. The color I ended up picking was 3 and 11, which on the color chart, the slides I just showed you on the screen, if I had circled that color, I can see it's 3 and 11, which is yellow and violet. On my palette, I grabbed a little bit of the yellow, which would be the third color, put some in here, and then I grabbed some of the violet, which is the 11 here. And I just added that right on top. I mixed a pretty good section, like all of this was the color I was using. Again, because I know it's going to be a larger area, so I mixed more paint just to make sure I have enough to fill the area. So that's my base. I would let it dry before you add in more layers on top of it. So that's why I painted it beforehand. So that's dry now. So the next thing I'm going to look for is my next value. So I have slightly darker values or midtones here. So I'm going to try to match that color on the cheek. To me, it kind of has spots of closer to like orange or with orange with a little bit of black. Oh, sorry, I can't see that. On my color chart, it has orange or kind of orange with a little black somewhere in here. And that was 16 on the color chart. So again, it's super easy. Just grab your Sharpie and just number them all. Just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to make it so much easier for you to just look at the chart and figure out the colors too. So again, I said it was pretty close to like a 16 for the orange. To make it darker, the color the 12. Here, this one is kind of like the black, the really dark brown. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of that. It'll start turning it more brown or kind of tan. And again, I have my scratch paper here. I'm going to test it out. And that color looks pretty good for my next value. So again, as I look at my picture, I'm looking for like these slightly darker areas around the cheek. So with this color that I just mixed, you can see kind of her laugh lines, side of the face. She has some shadow around the nose. same for eye. So again, I'm kind of laying more like the mid-tones. The kind of like lighter color is the base. So now I'm going in, adding in darker colors, or kind of like medium values. So there's different ways of applying the paint. If you want it to be kind of more gestural, like you can see the paint strokes, you can definitely do that. So I'll do that to both sides real quick. And it shows your laugh lines on this side. Still picture. Shadows over here on our chin. I'll kind of just pause here just for the demo. All right. So as you can see, it's a little more rough. You can see some of the paint strokes here. If I did want it smoother, I can grab some water. What I like to do is my water cup, I'll dip my brush in there, make sure the paint's off of it, brush it on the side of the cup or the top of it, grab my paper towel, make sure it's not dripping water, just tap it on there. So my brush is slightly wet, and what I can do is move it around like the edges. So what that does is just softens up the paint. It's pushing the paint around. I like to work in slightly circular movements, and then sometimes I'll just go back and forth just pretty quick. So you can see all these like lines here, like the outlines. It's basically just pushing the paint around. So if it was a drawing, I'd say it's kind of like smudging it. So all these harsh lines can soften up the laugh lines if I want a little bit. But again, you can see this side is more blended. Again, all I did was with a slightly wet brush, just kind of brushing it in there. This side on the left is, you can see like the harsher edges and lines. That one's not blended on the left side. I'm going to start adding in just a little bit of darker values, just so you can see that. Pull up my picture. And for that, I can see like laugh lines, the nostrils, a little bit here, starts getting darker. With that one, I'm going to kind of just add more black to it so it gets darker. I'm using that black and orange for now. Just going to mix it real quick over here. So I just had black, added a little bit to that orange color I had. Again, and then obviously depending on how big the face is, I'm sticking to like a smaller brush with a point to it. That way I can get into like the nostrils, shaded areas. You can see it looks a little rough. Can add a little bit more water to it if I want to soften it. So what I'm doing is kind of just outlining where I see the shadows. A little bit coming in there. And again, I'm doing the same step where I'm dipping my brush in the water, cleaning off the black, tapping it on my paper towel, and then I can come back in and blend the edges. So again, all I'm using is just like the wet brush. I don't want too much water. You don't want to blend with a bunch of water because it'll bleed all over the place. The colors will mix too much and it'll start tearing the paper. So I'm being very careful to have barely any water on the brush as I'm mixing. All right, so now it looks a little weird still. On the left side, I'm going to use that same color I was using, the black with the orange. And this side, I'm going to do more of like a painterly approach, so I'm not going to blend it. So it's kind of rough, or a little more rough. Uh, it's kind of dry brush, and just, you can see it gets dry a little bit. Just looking for all the spots with the shadows. All right. So again, I know it looks pretty weird right now with just the skin colors. Once you start laying in like the lips, the eyes, and I still need to add a few more layers on top of the skin, it'll get there. But again, you can see more of like a rough approach to shading in, more painterly. You can see the brush strokes versus kind of like a smoother approach here. So those are just some quick skin tone variations. And again, just making sure you add a first layer, let it dry. Add your next like medium values, let it dry. Add the darker values. I'm going to let it dry, and then figure out if I need to add more, like in here, or darken up some areas as well. Um, let's see. I'm also going to do the skin color, or excuse me, lip color. So her lips look kind of like in here, like a red and black. So I'm going to grab some red. Brush. Grab some black. That looks pretty good. I like that color. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. This will be the base color. And I'm going to start just adding in the same color at the bottom. Bottom lip. And she does have lipstick on, but still her top lip is darker. So I'm going to add a little bit more black to that color I just had. Let me try it out right here next to the color. I want to go back in, start adding in a shadow on the top lip. All right, so those are kind of the base colors. based on her lip color. So I like that. The top one, you can see there's a slight shadow to it. That's the first layer. I'm gonna let it dry and probably go in a little bit darker. Actually, I can start a little bit now. Again, just making really fine lines. Oops. The fine lines on, like the brush is barely touching the paper. And I'm just pulling it just very lightly. A little bit of water. So you see it's starting to get darker. And then I just continue pushing that up a little bit. Her nostrils will get darker too. Start adding in her eyes, which are really dark brown. So instead of just going straight black, I'm going to add just a dot of orange to the black. It's good to me. It's coming out kind of rough, so I'm going to add just a little bit of water to it. Alright, so it's pretty dark brown. Gonna go ahead and add this line in, just darker, green black. Again, the brush is slightly wet. I'm kind of pulling it across. Adding a really thin line underneath. Add in pupil. Some shadow. Add a little water to that. You can see a shadow here. Using that same color, I just watered it down. Shadows in here. I'm trying to do it a little quicker. So those are kind of just some of the shadows I started with. I cleaned off my brush, and just with a slightly wet brush, I can soften up those edges. So again, I don't have any paint on the brush, it's just water. If I mess up and bring it too far down, I can always tap it with a paper towel. Alright, so that's kind of just the start to that part. Alright, so that's quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and pause there.